news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Amy Morris. There's your closing bell for this Monday on Wall Street, where oil surged and markets were little changed for the most part. Stocks pared back their losses after an earlier slide, and we bring you those closing numbers each day here at Bloomberg. The S&P 500 gained 3 points. NASDAQ gained 81. The Dow lost 73 points. The 10-year Treasury yield at 4.04%. The 2-year yield at 3.47%. Let's check Brent crude oil now. It is up 7.5%. That's about $78.35 a barrel. Bitcoin is up about 5%, around $69,000. Spot gold is now up 1%, around $53.33 per ounce. And the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index is up about 0.75%. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon warns that inflation could become a skunk at a party for the U.S. economy.
Asset prices are kind of high, credit spreads are kind of low. There's kind of a lot of complacency in the market. I'm not sure. We look at risk, we look at the broad range of outcomes, and there are negative outcomes, but one of them would be, inflation. I call that's the skunk at the party.
Dimon says there's more inflation risk than people think, and that could happen if the U.S. and Israel's missile attacks on Iran lead to prolonged higher oil prices. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon on Bloomberg TV. Iranian forces said on Iranian TV that they will, quote, set fire to any ship attempting to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Ibrahim Jabari is advisor to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps commander and says they won't allow, quote, a single drop of oil to leave the region. Mike McClone is a senior commodity strategist with Bloomberg Intelligence.
To me, this is a rally to sell in crude oil. By the end of the week, if the U.S. military does not completely subdue Iran and potentially their offensive abilities, which would be unusual, the U.S. military is pretty good at this, then I think this is a short-term blip in crude oil. The key thing is a bigger picture is Mr. Trump has an election in November, and what does he want? Probably lower energy prices.
U.S. Central Command now says 6 U.S. service members have been killed in action. Officials say forces recovered the remains of 2 more service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in that region. And the strikes against Iran are not going to end soon. President Trump says the 4 to 5 week schedule for these strikes on Iran could be shorter because the campaign is now ahead of schedule.
We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay, whatever it takes.
Now, earlier, Trump told the New York Post that he won't rule out sending U.S. troops into Iran if they're necessary. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. will go as far as necessary to advance American interests.
We're not going to go into the exercise of what we will or will not do. I think it's one of those fallacies for a long time that this department or presidents or others should tell the American people, this and our enemies, by the way, here's exactly what we'll do. Here's exactly how long we'll go. Here's exactly how far we'll go. Here's what we're willing to do and not do. It's foolishness.
Hegseth says this campaign will not lead the U.S. into an endless war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says one objective of this war is not regime change.
The leadership of that country does not reflect the people of Iran, and I think that's been pretty apparent in the protests that you've seen. If there's something we can do to help them down the road, we'd obviously be open to it, but that's not the objective. The objective of this mission is the destruction of their ballistic missile capability.
Rubio spoke before his meeting on Capitol Hill with congressional leadership. 3 U.S. fighter jets crashed after being mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses. All 6 aircrew ejected safely. They've been recovered and are in stable condition. The United Arab Emirates and Qatar are privately lobbying allies to help them persuade President Trump to reach for an off-ramp that would keep U.S. military operations against Iran short. Sources tell Bloomberg the countries are seeking to build a wide coalition to advance a swift and diplomatic end to the conflict to prevent regional escalation and a prolonged energy price shock. Now, the UN nuclear watchdog says military action alone won't be able to resolve the ambiguity over Iran's nuclear ambitions. International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi.
At some point, this will come to an end, hopefully sooner rather than later. And when that happens, you will still have a question mark around these activities, these nuclear activities, and we will have to go back to the negotiating table. This is what we mean when we say we need a diplomatic solution.
IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi on Bloomberg TV. That's news when you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Amy Morris, and this is Bloomberg.